All right, for this assignment, you're going to use Unsplash to choose 3 different types of photos. One of the photos should be a photo that has light and shadows. Let me make sure this is in the field of view. Lights and shadows, so there's a shadowed area here and a lot of natural light, so probably an outdoor photo would work really well. The other photo, you're going to want to have a rainbow of colors, and I got this one from Unsplash. There's many options you can work with, but you're going to use that for color. And one image that excuse me, is shot in the dark, and what we're trying to get at is digital noise. Let me show you how to correct that. So all 3 of these images, you're going to open them up, and you're going to do a before and after. So you may want to do it maybe this way. You can make a copy of it. So if I just hit copy and then paste, I'm going to have my originals. They got moved off to the side. And then I'm maybe going to leave them intact because I'm going to want the original and the edit, because what I'm looking for is the difference in what you did to show me that you've practiced the skill that we're working with. So I'll open all of these by just selecting. There's multiple ways to do it. Right-clicking, open with Adobe Photoshop, and a Photoshop will pop in, and it's still got that crop tool. And if you ever see that, you just hit the escape button and it'll clear that crop. It's just whenever it crops on, it immediately thinks that you want to crop the image. You do not have to. You can if you want to, but you don't have to for this image because I'm looking more at something else. So let's start with the light one. Hit escape. What you're doing is you're taking the light tool and opening it up. I'm sorry. You're taking this filter and you're using what's called the Camera Raw filter. That's Shift-Command-A for a shortcut. And you're opening up the image in another, call this the digital darkroom. This is where you can make a lot of impacts and a lot of changes on a photo, and I want to show you some of the things that you can do. So really what I'm trying to break it down to is 3 different sections of this tool. There are some new tools like eraser tools that can erase objects right from Photo Raw, and selection tools, but for right now I'm just looking at what's called, in this case, a universal edit, where I'm changing the entire photo. But in order to do that, first you got to understand a little bit of what this means. This is called the histogram. And the histogram is a bar graph that represents, in this case, high and low values, meaning that the dark reds are here, the dark blues are here, and then the brighter blues and greens and reds are on this side. And then the number of times that they occur. So at this point right here, this particular shade of blue, probably correlating with the blue sky that's very much the same color, that's probably the number of pixels that is the highest of any one color. But it's easier to see the histogram when you take a look at it in black and white, because black and white now is just all one spectrum. Black is on the very left, white is on the very right, and all the ones in between are in between. So I'm going to use this to explain how this works. It works both for color and for black and white, but what you're doing is you're changing these values under light. When I increase the exposure, it's as if the camera was left on longer and got more light in. And when you move that to the right, you're pushing this histogram all the way to the right. And you can get really extreme to where they're almost all washed out. If I go the opposite direction, now I'm pushing all of the colors to the dark and the whole to the darker black side of the scale. That's what you're doing when you're doing exposure. You're basically dealing with the entire image as one image. Contrast, on the other hand, is when you increase contrast, you're separating your darks from your lights. So it's kind of squishing the middle of this histogram and pushing everything to the extreme. And in the image, you should be able to see that the brights are getting much brighter while the darks are getting much darker. If I go the opposite and reduce contrast, it starts to put everything into the middle and everything kind of gets a gray tone. You've also got highlights. Highlights will allow you to change just the brightest elements of it. And you can actually go up here and make those edits this way too. Generally highlights work for clouds, and generally what I'm trying to do is actually bring the highlights down so that I can see a little bit more contrast and more detail in the clouds. But it's not affecting the other areas of the image, just the brightest image. Shadows, I'm going to bring that back to 0. Shadows are affecting the shadowed areas. When you decrease the shadow, it gets darker. So the shadow's being pushed deeper into the shadow. You could say, think of it that way. And when you increase it, it's bringing the shadow out and letting you see what's buried in there. But a lot of times when you do that, you're going to see a lot of digital noise. It's not going to turn out very clean. So use that sparingly, or at least be aware of its limitations. And then whites, work with the white colors. Change the tone on just that very, very end. And then blacks, work with the black colors. And again, I can go up or down on white and then up or down on black tones. And it's kind of like shadows, where if you increase it, actually if you decrease it, the darker tones tend to move more to the true black. So if you use shadows and black, you end up bringing a lot more drama to the look of the photo. That's it. That's all that you're working with. And all of those things work the same way in color. It's just that it's a little more complicated because you're dealing with color values, but you're still shifting the curve to the right or left. You're still separating the highs and lows or making them more gray. You're still dealing with clouds. So in this case, bringing it down to get a little more detail. You're still dealing with shadows. You're still dealing with the white tones, increasing or decreasing the color white, and you're still dealing with black. When you're done with an edit, what you want to do is you want to work with all of these, and you want to create an image that starts with the image. You can go black and white, or you can stay color, and then you hit OK. And just like before, you're going to want to save this as, and I would do this as a light edit. And if saving doesn't work to JPEG, you can always go to export. Both of them work. I'm going to do light edit. That way, when I turn in all of my files, I'm going to be turning in the original image, unedited, and the edited version, so that when I'm looking through, I'm seeing the changes that you made. Same thing for color. So let me go ahead and get into the, I'm going to skip a few of those final steps. But color, when you go into the camera raw filter, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out about color. There is universal color edits, which change temperature. So you're either going to go cooler, more blue, or warmer. That's a universal edit. Tint, it starts to change all of the color values and shifts them to other values in the color wheel. And you can see that impact that it's having since I've got a rainbow of colors. That's what you're looking for, is a rainbow of colors that you can work with. Saturation is like really kind of overkill. You get images that look oversaturated, or you can drain them out and be just a smidge above black and white. That's a look that you'll see sometimes. And then vibrance is like saturation, but it's boosting in a more subtle way. So it's trying to look more realistic and not give you the way over the top oversaturated colors. So they all work together. These are all considered universal color edits. But if you look down to the color mixer, now you've got a little bit more control over hue, saturation, and luminance, and you can affect one color at a time. So for example, saturation, let's say I want my blues to be desaturated. What that should do is take some of that color out of the sky. And I want to boost my reds, so I'm boosting the reds up. Only the red tones. So it's letting you choose one color at a time and affect 3 different things. That was saturation. Hue, I could take my yellows, for example, and shift them, and now all the yellows are turning more to the green hue. You can see the color on the bar. Or I can make my yellows more orange. So in that way, I can change the actual color value of colors within this field. So every color I can change the hue for. And the last one is luminance. And luminance, I think I'll work with green for that one. For luminance, it's still the same color, but it's a darker version of color or the brighter version of the color. So you're basically increasing or decreasing the value of that one color channel. So take a look at those 2 areas and make an edit that's obvious. Try a couple of things. Have some fun with it. This is a great chance for you to explore and experiment with Camera Raw. Click OK, and then you're going to save that as an edit. Your final one is you're going to want a picture that's dark. And I'm going to show you why right in a second here real quick. I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Camera Raw Filter. Get back to that box that we were working with. And I'm going to close the color mixer. There's 2 things that kind of work in tandem. One is effects. And effects gives you things like the ability to dehaze the image. This is good when you've got a really hazy day because it can basically digitally delete it. I'm not seeing a whole lot of impact here. I definitely increase the haze by going negative on the dehaze bar. Texture is a different way of bringing some more definition to the photo. Clarity is similar. When you look at the close details, it's trying to create better edges so that you can see a little bit more. And a vignette, go back to fit. is you're bringing in a little bit of it's a dark vignette, this is a light vignette, and that's all a vignette is you're creating that ring around the photo. But you'll notice when I'm doing all of these things, I'm actually increasing what's called digital noise. So see if I can get in a little bit closer for this one. 100%. So you should see that as I increase these things, it's actually making it grainier and noisier. So when you increase any of these things, you're going to increase the digital noise. And I want you to try this out just so you can see. And again, make some edits that make this stand out from your original photo, whatever it is that you got. But if you click down here, there's another one called Detail. And this one's really useful for a photo like this, where even without edits, I've got a lot of digital noise, and it's just kind of, it looks bad, and when I print it, it's going to look fairly bad. It's got to do with the fact that most cameras on phones don't do too well in dark situations. Noise is usually a product of not having enough light to clearly see the image, and this is what the camera interprets. Color noise, I don't see that very often, but if you start to see lots of reds and blue dots from an image that's been exposed for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, like say you're taking a star field, that's what you're getting. But these two things right here, sharpening. And again, if you sharpen an image and then you reduce the noise, they kind of work against each other. But it's doing the same thing that those effects are doing, trying to give you a little more edge. So it's calculating how to see detail a little bit better, a little bit sharper. But it doesn't replace a really good sharp image. It just turns a not so sharp image into a little bit more sharp and sacrifices the quality by giving you more noise. But noise reduction is going to have a huge impact on this. So I'm going up to about 58, and what I'm really usually looking for is just to see if most of those noise elements are gone. Because if I keep pushing noise reduction up to 100, I start to get more fuzzy edges. So the exact opposite of what I was doing when I was sharpening or dealing with effects, trying to get more clarity in the image. I'm reducing that. So I don't need to go all the way. I'm just trying to clean up to a point where it smooths out the image. And even though it's hard to see that, when you print it out, you're going to notice that the background elements are going to have a lot less noise. The foreground element's going to come out a little bit cleaner, and you're only sacrificing a little bit of sharpness to do that. So that's what we're doing today, is we are experimenting with Camera Raw. Now, you may have noticed I left some of these blank because they're all complicated, but if you want to take a deeper dive and play around with the color curve and color grading and optics and lens blur, which really you don't need any of this stuff at this point. This is not something that we're really going to work with, but the most important ones are light, color, effects, color mixer, and detail. If you've used all of those, then you've got a tool now to take an image in immediately and start working with it and getting a look out of it that it didn't have when you first saw it. My advice is play around with it a lot, but when you actually do this for real, you're probably not going to make huge changes. You're not going to want to oversaturate an image or change the exposure so everything's bright. But a very select group of combination of subtle changes will increase the image quality of the image if you know what you're doing. So take some time on each of those images. Be sure to save an edited version and send me the original version, and so I can see. So there should be 6 images total. Thank you.